Stormy Daniels, Donald Trump. You wanted to see it, you got it. Porn star and the president. I know, I'm tired of hearing about it too, but it's a fascinating case study. You'll want to check this out. By the way, I predicted it would blow up back before the solar eclipse and lunar eclipse in February. Okay, so this is a video about Trump, Stormy Daniels, their sort of connection, and the current astrology, including things I stated in around the middle end of January before the eclipse that came over Trump's Saturn Venus, and the predictions that I made that it was going to really sort of devastate his relationships, and it could be the beginning of some huge sex scandals and that could bring down his presidency. I mean, at the time, this wasn't being talked about. We had just seen Stormy Daniels come out, and we had heard a little bit about what might happen, but it could have also just kind of gone away. But I was like, no, we might see a lot more of this, and that's exactly what's happened with new adult film stars or Playboy Bunny. And I said at the time that it's going to blow up his relationship and his marriage. I even said his marriage could be like effectively over. And I even said I wouldn't be surprised if it even led maybe even to a divorce or separation or obvious major problem, that the truth was going to come out. And we were going to see the truth of his relationships with women. That was the main thrust of it. And because his relationships with women is not good, it was going to be revealed. Now, I said this because, of course, Trump is in Jupiter Mahadasha. Jupiter is the ruler of both his 7th house Lord Saturn, and the Karaka of relationships, Venus, both in the 12th house. Saturn is at a very early degree, so this shows a lot of unreliable and dishonest energy. 12th house is about secrets, often lies, but not being honest is very clearly shown when planets are in the 12th house. Sometimes it's dishonest, not because it's intentionally. Sometimes it's just we're confused, so we say things and we're not paying attention. Other times like this, it's more aggressive. Why? Because you have planets in difficult dignity and ruling things that are very active and difficult to manage for the person. Like for Leo, it's a Leo Ascendant, Venus is already a functional malefic. It rules the 3rd house and also the 10th house of power. And Saturn is also a natural and functional malefic for Leo, maybe the most difficult planet, ruling the 6th house of problems, trouble, battles, and 7th house of partners. So the reason I made this prediction around the time of the eclipse is because, well, lo and behold, this is Trump's chart, Jupiter Dasha, and Jupiter is ruling these planets in his 12th. Even if it hadn't been, you could make the prediction that, look, eclipse right in his 12th house over his double relationship factors. Venus the Karaka, Saturn the 7th Lord, and there's an eclipse right on it, right? And then if you fast forward, this was the lunar eclipse, but then when you fast forward toward the next solar eclipse, you see that the solar eclipse winds up being here in his 7th house. Sorry. The solar eclipse winds up being in his 7th house. This was the next solar eclipse. And again, this is his 7th house because here's his 1st house and here's the solar eclipse. So we're in this cycle where his 2 relationship factors were eclipsed by a lunar eclipse, and then his relationship itself was eclipsed by the solar eclipse. And by the way, he's ruled by the sun. So his ruling planet was eclipsed in his 7th house on the solar eclipse. Huge. Now let's bring in Miss Stormy Daniels. And we do have accurate birth time for her. Another astrologer and actually an acquaintance that I know named Stephanie Weiss, who has a Twitter account called, I think it's EcoSex on Twitter. She actually messaged Stormy Daniels directly on Twitter about her birth time, and Stormy Daniels replied. It's very good, accurate birth time. So good job, Steph. You see that it's March 17th, 1979 at 1:10 a.m. in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So we have an accurate birth time for Stormy Daniels. We have a Sagittarius ascendant, right? And look at all this energy around this axis. K2 Mars, Saturn Rahu. So she's got Saturn Rahu in Leo in his first house. We just saw in that video that she just did on the 60 Minutes interview where she spanked him. She took a magazine and spanked him. She's spanking him in more ways than one right now, by the way. He's really met his match. I've known a few people who've had K2 Mars in the 7th, or actually it's not the 7th house, but it's his 7th house, and that's a formidable placement. If someone has K2 Mars in your 7th house, or K2 Mars on any of your planets, that's not to be trifled with. Look, she's got Saturn Rahu conjunction and K2 Mars conjunction, which is already, again, formidable, powerful. This is not somebody you want to mess with. So she even rolled up a magazine and like spanked him with it because he was bragging. It's funny in that interview. In his first house, right? Punishment, Saturn. But she's also got K2 Mars in her 3rd house, and that's where the eclipse fell. This was that solar eclipse. And look, you see it falls in, she has the Purvabhadra Nakshatra. Now, the eclipse was in Dhanishta, but still, it's very close conjunction within a couple degrees, right? Very close K2 Mars conjunction, but of note, primarily is this. That lunar eclipse, let me go back to the lunar eclipse and make this go back as well. We can see that that lunar eclipse also fell right on her Jupiter, exalted Jupiter in the 8th house. Stormy Daniels is ruled by Jupiter. It's Sagittarius ascendant, ruled by Jupiter, and it's retrograde in her 8th house, extremely exalted. The degree of exaltation, right? The degree of exaltation. And Jupiter's going retrograde in her natal chart back to the exact point of his planets. He's got Venus at 230 of Cancer and Saturn at less than 1 degree. She's got Jupiter at 5 going back, retrograde back toward it. That's a very dignified and powerful Jupiter going back toward his very weak planets. And these planets are weak. And they're in his 12th house. And it's exposing secrets. Like I said back then, the secrets are going to come out. We already saw the one secret come out. I didn't even see her chart at that time when I said it. I didn't see that chart at the time when I said it. But look, it's her 8th house. So her 8th house exalted Jupiter. 8th house, which is blowing things up and bringing chaos and destruction in our life, is right on his 12th house of secrets, and not just secrets, but relationship secrets, marital infidelity. And she's really, her courage and her savvy and her kind of out-trumping Trump with her and that lawyer who are just like punking him and trolling him have really paved the way for Ms. McDougal to come out, who was the Playboy playmate. These are very credible people. You know, Trump tried to silence them, you know, and just sort of denied and marginalized them during the campaign and whatnot. But now that we hear from them, these are very credible people. They both seem to be very honest. Ms. McDougal talked about how she was in love and she thought he was too, and they had an ongoing connection. And you hear just these, you know, again, and it's, I don't care what anybody says. At some point, it has to wear on anybody who is a Trump supporter, just visualizing taking her, this woman he's having an affair with, taking her through their home, and oh, that's Melania's room. And imagine if you were a woman and your man did this. It's not just having an affair, but the callous, almost psychopathic, sociopathic capacity to compartmentalize the lying to the point to where you can bring the woman into your house and walk this woman around your house. Let's say that you're the woman that's being cheated on. I don't care what anyone says. Any woman with self-respect, or even without self-respect, would be extremely angry at this and realize that this man is like, I don't care what anybody says. That has to be. I can't think that Melania Trump actually thought that Donald Trump was doing that. Maybe she knows he's having his affairs and he's somewhere, but that is so brazen and so disrespectful. Again, almost sociopathic. Just in the sense of like, and I say sociopathic meaning there's no conscience. It's bad enough that someone has the conscience to cheat, but we can kind of understand it because there's things like sex and compulsion there. But to then say, oh, come and walk around my house. Yeah, that's where Melania, the woman, the wife, my wife, the mother of my child, who I see every day, who I'm cheating on with you, who I don't tell about this, that's where she stays. Whatever. Anyway, I'm just saying this because it has taken this conversation to another level, to where, like I said back in January, his marriage is going to be effectively over. There is no, it's hard to imagine that Melania Trump could ever, I'm not saying, just not trust him, but that this didn't impact her in some way. You look back at her defending that, Access Hollywood tape, the old grab him by the what tape, and her saying, oh, boys say this stuff, blah, blah. I wonder if she's saying that now. Okay, he took the mistress and walked through your house. Not only that, and then he was cheating on the mistress with the porn star. Again, it's just like it's a level of detail and a level of pathology and compulsion and lack of discrimination. Do we want you can't just say, oh, well, that's his personal life. It's not just his personal life. He's the president now, and how is he running the country? How can he focus really on his job? Right? So easily. So again, all I'm saying is that this has come out, like I said at the time, this was going to blow up. And you can see how it has blown up. It's almost taken the whole Russia thing off the front page, which it's not off the front page. But you go back and watch that video, I also said Mueller closing in because of all of the 6th house and 7th house possibilities. That's also going on, by the way, but we're hardly even talking about it. Because I said this was going to really blow up, and it did. And you can see why. So we look at this chart of Stormy Daniels, and again, this exalted Jupiter in her 8th house. Of course, 8th house is the house of change, transformation. It's not necessarily sex. It's about vulnerability and transforming vulnerability into strength. And so, of course, as a sex worker, profiting from dark, secretive things that are not sort of talked about in the public. The 8th house has to do with taboo subjects and scandal. Of course, this is all sex. This is all the way sex is thought about in the world. So you can see why she has that sort of power to benefit and profit from that, and an identity that revolves around these secretive, sort of taboo professions and subjects and whatnot. But what's most compelling is this exalted Jupiter. Now look at the dignities. We have an exalted Jupiter on Venus and Saturn, both of them in great enemy dignity. They're both in difficult dignity here, right? And very low degree for the Saturn, very low degree for the Venus. And by the way, Venus would be the sex. Venus would be lying about the sex, because Venus is sex. 7th Lord is lying to your partner about it. Because, when you get Venus in the 12th, there could be a lot of romanticizing about sex and partners, and maybe even having secret sexual liaisons, maybe also lying to your partner about it. Could be, but often if you get Venus in the 12th house, there's a lot of romance and kind of a secret fantasy life. The 7th house ruler is the one that brings us into the relationship with the other person. It's the difference between the Karaka and the ruler. We have them both there. So it's not just something that's a kind of fantasy, but it's also being untruthful about it. And let's be honest, there's been some, I don't care if someone's a Trump supporter or not. Again, it just gets almost ridiculous to be defending things that you hear. I mean, how do you call this fake news? I mean, both of them said that he talked about his daughter, Melania. Who talks about their daughter while you're cheating on your partner? Like, oh, you remind me of my daughter and she's amazing. Like, we've all seen the way he acts towards his daughter. He's on record 2 or 3 times of saying, what do you have in common with your daughter? And he says, sex. Isn't she hot? I'd be dating her if she wasn't my daughter. I mean, pictures when she was younger. I mean, I don't want to speculate about anything, but it's just, let's be real. This is beyond cringeworthy and yucky for anybody, let alone the president, who is in charge of supposedly keeping the country, you know, safe and telling the truth and all of these things. Can't even tell the truth to his wife. He can't even tell the truth to his mistress. He cheats on one with the other. I mean, again, it's just like, okay, I mean, at some point it's just, you know, make America great again, I guess, right? So at some point, no matter what anybody says, this is just going to erode. And I did see in recent polls that his popularity is higher than it's been in a while. Yeah, I mean, go figure. I guess people just only think about the economy or something, but regardless of what anyone says, at some point, this is, whether it affects his poll numbers or not, and, you know, again, there comes a point where we got to stop looking at everything about how it affects his poll numbers or his voters. There's a thing that's called danger. It is dangerous to have someone so besieged by personal scandal, political scandal, making war with everybody, political war with law enforcement like the FBI, trade wars with China and others, not to mention other kinds of, you know, personal wars with you know, people like this, and even, you know, perhaps even intimating about shooting wars with other countries around the wall and stuff, or I'm sorry, around the, like North Korea, and, you know, having some of these, you know, the National Security Advisor McMaster leaving and bringing in Bolton, who is a total warmonger, who is against the Iran deal, against any kind of negotiation with North Korea, extremely hawkish. So this is dangerous stuff. And we got a president who can't tell the truth and have integrity. There comes a point where you need to be able to trust that the president's being honest with you. It's almost laughable at this point to think he's honest about anything. How can he rally consensus? How could we have partners to combat what we need to combat? Other intelligence agencies around the world are hesitant to share intelligence with us now because we have a president who doesn't believe it, who believes in conspiracy theories. Again, all of this conspiracy theory kind of thing is also shown with these planets in the 12th. At the very least, we can't believe what he says. And again, those of you who say, well, we couldn't believe Obama and the other ones too because they were never telling the truth. Okay, look, I'm not going to... All right, if that's what you think, okay. But again, beyond all of that, this is a case study primarily about the connection between these two people and how this is shown by the eclipses. Because look, she also had her Lugna Lord in the 12th, her Lugna Lord in the 8th eclipsed. Her ruling planet eclipsed in the 8th house, but it's given her this like huge notoriety, this huge platform now, this huge kind of recognition, I guess you would say. But it's come as she brings down the president, at least in the sense of, you know, bringing out the truth of this, you know, these lies and these secrets, because he keeps denying it. And again, who knows what's to come? It's painful to think that there could be video or pictures or whatever, and this is dangerous territory for him. Again, I said in the video back in January, he could be brought down by a sex scandal. That's what brought Bill Clinton down. It wasn't Whitewater. It was lying about having sexual relations with that woman and lying under oath. Does anybody think that Donald Trump could tell the truth to a group of prosecutors? And again, the reason he's not saying anything back is because if he says something back, again, he could be subject to deposition where he has to go speak and he has to tell the truth. If they have corroborating evidence, like a video of them doing it, and he says, no, I didn't, that is lying under oath and perjury. And that's what brought down Bill Clinton. So again, there's a reason why he's not saying anything. Mr. They're all liars and all this. He's not saying anything now, because if he says something now, they could, they're basically daring, Clinton and Trump and Cohen to like sue them. They're saying, sue us. Go ahead and sue us. Go ahead and sue us. Now we get to open up exploration and get you under oath. This is why they're not doing it. So to say this is a perilous, dangerous game is an understatement. Like I said back before the eclipses hit, he could be brought down by a sex scandal. And I also said Mueller closing in, which is true because of all this 6th and 12th house energy. But definitely I saw this was not going anywhere. This was going to blow up. And I hadn't even seen her chart yet, but this is a formidable adversary, needless to say. You see an exalted retrograde Jupiter right back, hitting all of his natal planets and all this 8th house, 12th house energy, bringing out his lies. And she's the one doing it because it's in her 8th house, like killing him. Bam. So very powerful stuff. She's in a Saturn moon dasha as well. What's the ruler of Jupiter? The moon. What's the other ruler of Jupiter? Saturn. Jupiter is in Pushya Nakshatra. The two rulers of Pushya are Saturn in Vimshotri dasha and the moon. They're both there. This is why Jupiter is so active right now, because there's the other planet that's ruled by Saturn and the moon, and that's Venus in Shravana. What's the ruler of Capricorn? Saturn. What's the ruler of Shravana? The moon. Saturn moon dasha rules both Venus and Jupiter for her. Venus, of course, is the planet of sex. It's in Capricorn. Saturn moon dasha, and it started right after Saturn moon dasha. All this started to come out. Venus in Capricorn and Shravana, Saturn and the moon. Jupiter in Pushya, ruled by Saturn, and Cancer, the moon. And that means kaboom. She's going to blow up in a lot of ways. And she's blowing up him. That ruling planet Jupiter in the 8th house, exalted, because she's profiting a lot. She's really benefiting a lot. Her stature, her persona, her identity, much more than it's ever been and maybe will ever be. Because this powerful, exalted, retrograde Jupiter, this is how it's given its result. Retrograde in the 8th, right there. So pretty amazing stuff. When I saw the birth chart, I had to check it out and I was like, oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So it's great when we have actual charts and we can run some case studies and actually look at stuff happening. Reaffirms the principles that we already know. So again, kudos for Stephanie Weiss for getting the birth time. Way to go. And hope you enjoyed this case study. Share it with others and subscribe to my channel. If you're seeing this on YouTube, share it with others again, and I'll be in touch with updates.